Mentioned wholeness or being open to the whole community. And the daily word is about wholeness. I am whole. I am a whole and healthy expression of spirit. Appearances are temporary impressions and not an accurate picture of who I am. If I am facing a health challenge, I bless my body for the restorative powers that have their source within me in the life of God. Despite any outer appearance, wholeness and strength of mind are the truth of me. I am a product of divine life, and I connect this with spiritual essence through prayer and meditation. In moments of quiet reflection, I turn within to this inner wellspring of healing and feel the energizing flow of God's perfect life in and through my body. This life is continually flowing, bringing health and healing to every part of my body and being. My heart beats with the rhythm and harmony of God. My cells vibrate with the energy of life. I can feel that. Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly. And that verse is from Isaiah 58, verse 8. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
And now, as we breathe together, let us just pause those thoughts. Breathing in that divine love and life, and breathing out gratitude as we relax into that still and quiet place within. Affirm within, we are divine. We are the inheritors of truth. We are one together. As we move deeper, let us just realize there is nowhere that we can go and no time that Source is not with us. We are in the flow of life always. There is no one who can take that away. And you have the choice. It is my choice for me to be in that flow. As we move closer to that stillness and experience experience that silence within, we allow that flow. Even as the music flows by our body, the flow of life, the holy breath moves through us in the silence. And from that peaceful stillness, may we realize truth. The truth of our oneness with each other. The truth of our togetherness with the entire world, with the entire universe. With gratitude, we activate our understanding so that we may comprehend and know. We activate our power of discernment so that we may take what it is from the message this morning and put it to use in our life, in practice, and that we just leave the rest for another time. We are grateful for one another. We are just grateful. Thank you. And so it is. Amen. So this morning, I want to talk about Myrtle Fillmore's 5 steps of healing. That's a picture of Myrtle there behind me. Myrtle and her husband Charles were the founders of Unity. I don't know, maybe y'all know that already. Maybe not. They began Unity in the late 1800s. It was based on prayer and the power that our thoughts have over their expression. They both suffered from physical ailments. Myrtle was diagnosed with tuberculosis, and it was a family disease. So she was told as a little girl that one day she would die of tuberculosis. So she internalized that. She took that as her truth of I am. The doctors had told her she had 6 months to live. And her and her husband decided we got to do anything we can do, anything that's in our power to keep you alive. They had heard about a metaphysical speaker who was coming to town there in Kansas City named E.B. Weeks. He is a student of Emma Curtis Hopkins. And in his lecture, one thing that he said in particular really struck Myrtle Fillmore. It was what you might call an epiphany for her. It was just a sudden insight. A light bulb went off and she knew that it was true. What she heard was, I am a child of God, and therefore I do not inherit sickness. And that was powerful for her because in the past, she was under that influence of that statement that her father had made that she was going to die of tuberculosis one day. And she was well on the path to doing just that. But when she heard this statement, it was a change in her life. It was a true repentance. She had been in error thought, and by hearing that statement, she changed her whole way of seeing the world. After 2 years of prayer and meditation, she healed her body of tuberculosis. The doctor said that was incurable, and she did it with prayer and meditation. Her husband Charles saw this happen to his wife and really began to want to understand what was going on that allowed this to happen. He had a leg that had been injured in an ice skating accident when he was a boy. It was significantly shorter than his other leg. I have heard that he had like a 3-inch platform on his shoe when he started what would end up being Unity. In time, he was able to walk normally. You wouldn't even know that he had that. And I think his platform, don't quote me on this, but I believe it went down to like a 1/2 inch. It was always a little bit shorter, but it was nothing like what it had been. Power of prayer, the power of changing his thoughts, made his leg grow. His leg grew. That's a miracle, right? I mean, that really, it's beyond physical science that the power of thought could do that. They studied several spiritual teachers. They had been a reader of Ralph Waldo Emerson even before they went to see this the E.B. Weeks lecture. I don't know if you know Ralph Waldo Emerson. He was a transcendentalist. He had a buddy named Henry David Thoreau. Thoreau pretty much lived at Emerson's house. Walden Pond, that was Thoreau. Emerson was more of the theoretical side of transcendentalism, and Thoreau was definitely on the practicing side. He got locked up in jail. It was all over about the war. He in abolition. He just, if he didn't believe it was true, that it was right, he didn't do it. He didn't pay his taxes to a government that was having these things to happen. He saw the government as unjust, and so it was unjust for him to pay his taxes, and that's what they locked him up for. Because we got to pay our taxes, right? That's what they got the gangsters for, and not for killing people, but for not paying their taxes. Okay, so they were influenced by the thought of Ralph Waldo Emerson. They were also influenced by Mary Baker Eddy. You've never heard that name. She was the founder of Christian Science. Christian Science is still out there as a denomination today. In fact, one of the early names they had before they found Unity, they were using Christian Science because it was sort of a generic term. And Mary Baker Eddy said, no, I own that name. And then there was some lawsuits. And Charles said, well, we're not going to fight about it. You can have it. He had a dream. Unity came to him. That name, Unity, and using that name came to him in a dream right about the time that Mary Baker Eddy said, no, you can't use that word Christian Science. Emma Curtis Hopkins, she started out as a student of Mary Baker Eddy. But Mary Baker Eddy was very strict in what you could read and study. In other words, you could study what Mary Baker Eddy said, or you could study the Bible, and that was it. And Emma Curtis Hopkins was a well-read person. She read everything that she could get her hands on, and that means Eastern religions. She was very well-read in that, and all the alternative Christian stuff that she could read. If you read one of her books, I've been working on High Mysticism, which is kind of her last book that she wrote. There's references in there that I don't know where they came from. And she didn't footnote, so you don't have the footnotes to go and say, oh, well, she got that from here. So it really is not only a challenge, it's a work to read Mary Baker Eddy. I'm sorry, to read Emma Curtis Hopkins. She's known as the teacher of teachers because not only did she teach Charles and Myrtle, Fillmore, Ernest Holmes was one of her students. And I don't know if you know Ernest Holmes. He's the one who started what's now Centers for Spiritual Living. It was called Science of Mind back in the day. And it became Centers for Spiritual Living. And there's one of those here in town. It's really Center for Spiritual Living and Unity are the main two new thought movements that are still alive and doing well. There's several that started back around the turn of the century, from 1800s into 1900s. But those are the two that are still around and have any numbers. Christian Science even is falling away. There's very, very few Christian Science churches around anymore. Emmett Fox. I love Emmett Fox. He's one of he's got Sermon on the Mount. It's a wonderful book. Yeah, I really like his Golden Key. It was in the last sermon that I did. I had it quoted. It's a short essay, but it really boils down to one sentence. Stop thinking about the difficulty, no matter what it is, and think about God instead. And if we do that, it's amazing how much our lives change. Because when we dwell on the difficulty, what are we thinking about? We're thinking about the problem. Well, what do our thoughts do? They create. So what are we creating if we're thinking about the difficulty? We're creating more of the same. Whereas if we change our thinking and think about God instead, now what are we creating? We're not only changing ourselves, we're changing the world for the better. Okay, so Charles was so overwhelmed by this miracle healing of his wife and the messages, the things that he was reading about. He's like, I've got to share this with the rest of the world. This is important. So he didn't start a church. He started publishing a magazine. It was called Modern Thought. It came out in 1889. So that gives you sort of a time frame for what we're talking about. That magazine is still published today under the title Unity Magazine. It comes out every other month. All right, the next year in 1890, Charles and Myrtle formed a prayer group that's now known as Silent Unity. It started out just people meeting in her kitchen, and they would pray in the evening. Oh, I want to mention there was a second magazine that started in 1924, and we read it every Sunday, called the Daily Word. So really, the practical lesson today, I just wanted to give you a little background on that this really does work, because Myrtle put it to use. And then she taught her friends. She taught in letters that she sent out to people that would write into the magazine, and she would respond with letters. And in that prayer group that met in her kitchen. And from her letters, we've been able to glean these 5 basic steps for healing. And they're not steps that you do 1, 2, 3, 4, one after another. It's not like a map process. It's kind of, these things kind of happen all at the same time. You go backwards and forwards as you need to between them. But they are just really quickly to know the truth of you. Notice your thoughts and actions. Use your creative power. Health is your natural state. And realize oneness. So let's break that down and talk about each one of those just a little bit. So if I know the truth of me, you know the truth of you, what are we really saying? In Psalms, we see that you are God's children of the Most High, all of you. How about that? That's in the Old Testament. That's not even in the New Testament. That's in the Old Testament. And it acknowledges our divine inheritance. Now, you may be thinking, yeah, okay, but I still got this pain in my leg, or my shoulder hurts, or my neck hurts, or I've got this congestion going on. It doesn't say that you don't have that issue, because you do. It's real. What it does say is that's not the ultimate of your being. The ultimate of our being is that we are spirit. And our spirit in us is never sick. Remember last week? Not God and Dean, but God as Dean. Not God and John, but John as God. There's a difference, a subtle difference. One implies a separation, and the other implies that we are all one. We are divine, and there is no room. There, you can't get a spatula between you and God. It doesn't matter how thin it is. There's just no room. So that's the truth of who we are. The next thing is notice your thoughts and actions. Now that we know who we are, we can become aware of what we're thinking. If we're thinking from a place of fear, worry, or doubt, then what are we doing? We're creating more of whatever it was that we're afraid of. We're becoming more and more fearful or in doubt of ourselves. So what can we do about it? We cleanse our thoughts. Just like you would wash your body in the shower, you cleanse your thoughts by going back to the first step and knowing the truth of who you really are. These things that you're afraid of are going to pass. They're just here now and gone tomorrow. But the Spirit in you is always there. If I'm not aware of it, that doesn't make it go away. It's Spirit is still there. But it's important to realize, and this is something that Myrtle used to talk about, that there's more to being healed in that wholeness than just our thinking. She emphasized that eating good food, exercising, and taking care of our bodies was also necessary. I mean, when you go and you're sitting in the silence, and you are affirming your wholeness, and Spirit says, okay, look at all that candy you've been eating. What is mine to do? Yeah, look at how much candy. It doesn't say I can never have a piece of candy. It just that's not what Spirit said. And you'll know. I cannot tell you, but you'll know. If you spend that time in the silence, Spirit will give you the direction that you need to bring that wholeness that you truly are. It's a work in progress. But the most important thing is to be aware of your thoughts, because our thoughts do create. And that's what's next, is to use our creative power. If we keep our attention centered in the divine consciousness, remember the golden key, stop thinking about the difficulty and think about God instead. So we bring our thoughts, we bring our attention to that divinity within us. And remember that Jesus said we can do everything that He did and more. This isn't just some hocus pocus. Science has proven it. If a doctor can give you a sugar pill and you get better, it wasn't the sugar that made you better. Something happened. Your brain thought, oh, the doctor's giving me medicine. The thoughts were, oh, I got medicine now, I'm going to be better. And lo and behold, we're better. And then if there's, that's a placebo. Okay? Did you know there was a thing called a nocebo? I never heard of that either, but I found it in this writing. A nocebo, that's when you focus on the illness, we get sick. And I've known people that do this all the time. They get in their mind that they've got something they saw on TV, and then they go to the doctor and say they're sick, and they're sick. But if you are sick, it's not an illusion, you really are sick, go to the doctor. We're not saying not to go to the doctor, and Myrtle was never saying not to go to the doctor. But at the same time, that doctor might be talking about the illness. So you got to be careful not to let that illness and those thoughts of that illness take over your mind. Bring your thoughts back to the spiritual nature of who you really and truly are. Because doctors are trained to concentrate on what's wrong. That's what they're taught. So that's what they're going to talk to us about. I went to the doctor pretty recently because my sugar level was high. And he's scary. He said some things that are just plain scary that can happen if I don't control my sugar. So instead of seeing myself as diabetic, I see myself as a whole person, and I do the things that are necessary to control my sugar level. So that's just a little way to put that. Because health is our natural state. There is no God out there who is sending some punishment of diabetes on me because I was a wild child in college. Which I was, but still. I'm not being punished for that. God wants the best for His children. And we are God's children. We all come from Source. That is the truth of who we are. And our natural state is to be healthy and whole. Now this is going to sound a lot like what we call metaphysical malpractice. But the difference between what I'm going to say and metaphysical malpractice is that whenever someone is not feeling well and they come to you and then they're not feeling well, we don't just say, oh, well, what are you thinking? What were you thinking to make yourself sick? The difference is, whenever I'm feeling sick, like I was a couple of weeks ago, I started looking, well, what is going on with my mental state? Really, what was I thinking? And I got to seeing, well, I was coming from a place of fear. There was some stress. I was afraid. I had a terribly hard problem to work on at work. It felt like it was impossible. I put undue stress on myself. I didn't, my boss, look at all this time I'm spending. My boss can't be happy with this. Come to find out, we had a meeting later, and they were perfectly aware. There was no, I put that stress on myself. There was no pressure from them. It was a perceived pressure on my part. And I guarantee if I would have let go of that sooner, I would have solved the problem sooner. Because I was stressing over this difficult issue. My mind was on the problem, not on spirit. Because some of the problems that I've solved, the answer came to me in my morning prayer. I spend some time in the morning, each morning, in prayer, in quietness, seeking that stillness. And out of that stillness, the idea just pops into my head. I may not know how to implement the idea, but I know the answer. I can go into work then, and then I just put in the steps that I know how to do now. It's a miracle. To me, every time I see it happen, it's amazing. But what was I doing? I wasn't thinking about the problem. I was totally in the stillness, or at least trying to be. And then, boom, here it comes. And it didn't come in language either. It just, the idea, it's like a light bulb coming on. That's why you see in cartoons, where whenever someone has an idea, the little light bulb pops on over top of their head. Alright, so sometimes someone gets labeled with a condition, and we see that person then as being wrong or unhealthy. It may be that they're blind. And say, oh, poor you can't see. Well, that's wrong. Just because a person is blind, that doesn't make them not whole. Some blind people are just as happy. I mean, you can look at what a light that Helen Keller was. I mean, she's just an example that I can bring up because she's known. But she practiced techniques that are very much like unity. She studied a man named Swedenborg, who was one of the influences on the early New Thought people. And he taught the same things that I'm talking about this morning. So just because you see someone in a wheelchair, don't automatically assume something's wrong with them. And don't go there. See the Christ in them. Because that's who they truly are. The more we practice being aware, the more powerful it becomes in us. It becomes part of our self-image. It's how we see ourselves. That's when you really realize that oneness. When it becomes so ingrained in you that that's your go-to way of seeing yourself. The default. I found this, I don't know if you call it a poem. It's too short to be an essay. But it's probably prose. I wanted to read this to you because it really just goes along with what I've been talking about this morning. It's by Martha Smock, who was an early Unity minister. There is life, substance, and intelligence in every part of your body. Every nerve, cell, and atom knows its essential purpose and works always to maintain a state of health and harmony in your body. If a state of ill health seems to exist, you can help it to right it by realizing that the natural condition of your body is that of wholeness and perfection. You can trust the life and intelligence in your body to harmonize and adjust and heal every unnatural condition. Do not take the responsibility for healing upon yourself. but let God's healing work be done in you. Quit worrying about your health. Quit giving undue attention to your ailments, and relax in the realization that there is life, substance, and intelligence in every part of your body. This is a healing treatment that brings results. For health returns when the mind is filled with faith and the heart is filled with peace. Relax and let God heal you. So, I just want to reiterate the 5 steps of healing. To know the truth in you. Notice your thoughts and actions. Use your creative power. Health is your natural state. And realize oneness. If you know you truly are an expression of the divine, if you keep your thoughts focused on the power of the infinite within you, and if you remember health is your natural state, then what could you be but one with all that is? The more you practice this awareness, the more powerfully it lives in you. It works if you work it. It works if you work it. That's right. So we have to practice it. This isn't just a reading session. I want to thank you so much for your time this morning and for your attention. Blessings.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to continue with the service and we're going to do a song. This will be easy because I'm going to sing what's